If we look at the performance, the actual financial performance of companies that have women at the top, and we look at the Fortune 500 companies that have the most women on their boards, and by the way, we're only talking about 18 to 20%. Those are the best. The companies that have the most women on their boards typically have about that. They will outperform more homogeneous boards, in other words, generally all male boards, by 42 to 66%. Those are, anybody here who works in a for-profit company should be taking a look at those numbers and changing this dynamic, getting more women on boards, because look at the returns that you're seeing, they're extraordinary. So this is showing return on investment, return on invested capital, return on equity across the board, where you have companies that have had at least 3 women on the boards for at least 4 out of 5 years. These are your better returns, ranging from 46 to 84% better. Eye-popping numbers, hugely important and impressive figures. And corporate America is responding to this. It is doing so at a glacial pace. So the best figure here is 3.4%, the worst is 2.7% in terms of the incremental rise between 2011 and 2015, but they are increasing their numbers of women on their boards. They are responding to the kinds of studies that have been published that, for instance, I'm pulling together and I'm publishing in Works. They are actually getting more women on their boards. Law firms are corporations or partnerships, it depends on how they're formed. But yes, they do much, much better when they're diverse. So when you have a law firm that's diverse from top to bottom, and you look across the AM Law 200, which are the largest 200 law firms in the country, the ones bringing in the greatest amount of revenues, if you compare like firms in the same city with the same number of lawyers, with the same number of hours billed, with the same rates, you will find that the firms that are more diverse outperform the firms that are less diverse by over $100,000 per partner. Just think about that. That is a huge, astounding figure. Diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. In fact, and this is Cedric Herring that we're talking about when we look at this, he has researched what would happen if you selectively chose people based on intelligence alone, and you make a team based on the most intelligent people. And then you create a team and you select it based on diversity alone. The diverse team will outperform the non-diverse team over and over again. There are men who are afraid to get involved in this work to try to move the needle and have greater diversity up to the top of our organizations. And I'm going to tell you that men stand to benefit tremendously from this. And I'll tell all the white men that are championing diversity in this room, you face a huge bump. You get considered far, far better. Unfortunately, women and minorities, when we champion diversity, and I'm obviously one of these people that does so, we're seen as all out for ourselves. You know, here I am trying to make the world a more inclusive and better place, and many in the room are trying to do the same, but there is a huge backlash to us when we try to do that. Diversity is not just good for business, it's not just good for society, it's good for entire countries. And this graph is amazing. Here, we have how much the countries are paying women as compared to how much they're paying men. This dollar here, unfortunately, there isn't a single country in the world that's paying women dollar for dollar what they pay men, or we would have a dot out there. The closest we have is Iceland, who's paying women close to 90 cents on every dollar that men make. The United States is back here at around 76 to 78, depending on how you slice it, cents to every dollar. I'd like to give you all the tools to increase gender diversity, whether you're in an organization or as an individual. Transfer to an open compensation system. The studies are replete and show very clearly that when you do, people are paid far more equally. Include representative numbers of women on the committees in charge of hiring, promotions, and pay, and therefore reduce the chance of unconscious bias impacting who's moving up the ladder in your organizations. Make gender inclusion a strategic initiative. Women's initiatives very overwhelmingly don't work. The only time they're going to work is where there's a buy-in from the top. And then you don't need the women's initiative because it's a company initiative. It's not some over this small group on the side that we really don't care about, we underfund, and we just say that we have one. It's actually something that the company believes in, buys into, and is using to become a better, stronger company. Set targets for inclusion, make people accountable for achieving the targets that you have. Financially reward the people that best promote and retain your women and minorities. And penalize those who do the worst. One very effective tool would be to, for instance, take a percentage of the profits that would otherwise go to partner ABC, who is doing a terrible job of retaining and promoting women and minorities, and give it to partner DEF, who's doing a fantastic job of it. Implement a comprehensive program to identify and minimize bias. Audit your hiring, your pay, your promotions along gender and minority lines, and really look at what's going on and who's doing the best and who's doing the worst. Check out how your assignments and networking opportunities are being distributed. You need to look at flexible working arrangements. This doesn't just benefit women. Believe me, everybody wants flexible working arrangements. I think we all know that. They're good for companies. Check rates. We haven't discussed this, but studies are showing that women are being billed out. I do defense work. Women are generally being billed out at lower rates than men are at comparable levels of work. So we need to check that. Check how your books of business are distributed. All right, these are my 3 tools that I'll finish up with that everyone can do. You don't have to be a manager, you don't have to be in-house counsel, everyone. Okay, place. When you see an opportunity for a woman, place her in it. Recommend it to her. That's placement. So for instance, each person here who was asked to speak, we were placed. Teresa Beck, thank you so much. You asked me to speak here today. That's placement. Echo. This helps avoid the issue of, he stole my idea. What if it never got to the point where he could steal your idea? So if you're in a co-ed setting and a woman or minority or someone who's both makes a great idea, that makes a great suggestion, how about this? Raise your hand and echo it. Say, for instance, Kiana just made a great point. Then repeat her point, assuming that no one else heard it, because that's probably the case. That's why somebody else can steal it later. Repeat it. She said that we should become more diverse and inclusive because our companies are going to do so much better. That kind of thing is invaluable. Then you don't get the person stealing her idea. You've disrupted bias before it ever occurred. So consider trying that. That's echoing. One last tool is to promote. Speak highly of women and minorities that have great skills, that people who you admire. This is, again, to help interrupt bias. So before somebody else can say something negative about someone, already be speaking positively about them. So develop a coalition of allies, women and men, people of color and white people. Develop allies and make sure you are speaking positively about each person in your team of allies so that you are preventing any of them from being the subject of bias. So thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I appreciate it.